October 31st, 2000. Halloween night. A double album drops into record stores across America wrapped in stark black and white. An inverted American flag behind two young men from Atlanta who look like they're about to explode your speakers. Inside that package is 74 minutes of music that shouldn't exist. Drum and bass at 155 beats per minute with a gospel choir. Prince funk married to dirty South bass. Rock guitar solos over hip-hop beats. Songs about baby mamas, politics, sex positivity, and the chaos of Y2K America. All produced by two guys who deliberately stopped listening to hip-hop while making a hip-hop album. The industry didn't know what to do with it. Radio stations banned the lead single because of its title. Critics called it too experimental. Traditional hip-hop heads thought it was too weird. Then, Ms. Jackson hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, OutKast's first chart topper. The album sold over 530,000 copies in its first week. And at the 2002 Grammy Awards, OutKast won Best Rap Album, cementing what many had refused to believe. The South wasn't just part of hip-hop's conversation anymore. Atlanta was leading it. But 5 years earlier, none of this seemed possible. 5 years earlier, two teenagers from Atlanta stood on a stage in New York City and got booed by an entire arena. This is the story of how OutKast made an album so forward-thinking that we're still catching up to it 24 years later. This is the story of Stankonia. Welcome to the Sound Vault. Every album has a story. This is OutKast's. August 3rd, 1995. Madison Square Garden's Paramount Theater. The Source Awards. The tension in the room is suffocating. This is the night the East Coast-West Coast rivalry will explode into public view. Suge Knight will take the stage and throw subliminal shots at Puff Daddy. The seeds of a feud that will leave Tupac and Biggie dead within 2 years are being planted right now, right here. In the middle of all this, two 19-year-olds from Atlanta, André Benjamin and Antoine Patton, better known as André 3000 and Big Boi, are about to accept the award for Best New Rap Group. They've just released their debut album Southern Playalistic Idyllic Music 6 months earlier. The album is a surprise hit driven by the single Players Ball, which spent 6 weeks at #1 on the rap charts. But this is New York, this is the birthplace of hip-hop. And these two kids aren't from New York or Los Angeles, the only two places that matter in hip-hop's geography. When their names are called, the crowd erupts in boos. They beat out Smith & Wesson, a Brooklyn duo. The hometown crowd isn't having it. The boos echo through the theater, loud and hostile and unmistakable. Big Boi tries to be diplomatic. He thanks New York, pays homage to all the original MCs. But the boos don't stop. Then André 3000 grabs the microphone. He's visibly frustrated, practically shaking, and he says 7 words that will change hip-hop forever. The South got something to say. He pauses, lets it hang in the air. That's all I got to say. Professor Regina N. Bradley, author of Chronicling Stankonia, The Rise of the Hip-Hop South, explains the significance. This is the genesis point for the hip-hop South. That moment created an incessant need to experiment with Southern blackness and expand notions of the Black South. Before OutKast, Southern hip-hop was dismissed as country shit by East and West Coast elites. After OutKast, ignoring the South became impossible. But respect wouldn't come overnight. It would take 5 more years, 3 more albums, and 1 Halloween night in 2000 to fully deliver on André's promise. To understand Stankonia, you need to understand the journey. OutKast's story begins in 1992, at Lenox Square Mall in Atlanta. André Benjamin and Antoine Patton, both 16, both students at Tri-Cities High School, meet and discover they share a love for rap. They start battling at local parties, catching the attention of production trio Organized Noise, Rico Wade, Ray Murray, and Sleepy Brown. The group starts recording at The Dungeon, Rico Wade's basement studio in southwest Atlanta. It's cramped, poorly ventilated, mostly second-hand equipment. But it's there that OutKast develops their sound, working alongside other young Atlanta artists who will form the Dungeon Family Collective, including Goody Mob, featuring a young CeeLo Green. Their 1994 debut, Southern Playalistic Idyllic Music, is proudly regional. Tales of East Point and Decatur, Southern slang, references to Cadillacs and players. It goes platinum, shocking the industry. But it's their second album, 1996's Atlians, that signals something deeper is happening. The production gets more psychedelic, more futuristic. They're not just representing Atlanta, they're imagining what Southern hip-hop could become. The album goes platinum in 6 weeks. Then comes Aquemini in 1998. The title combines their zodiac signs, Aquarius, Big Boi, and Gemini, André, acknowledging their creative tension. Big Boi is the grounded one, the street rapper, the player. André is the poet, the experimenter, increasingly interested in singing and melody. Aquemini is the first hip-hop album The Source magazine awards a perfect 5 mic rating in the South. Wu-Tang Clan's Raekwon appears on the track Skew It on the Barbie, and later recalls, "Before that, the South just wasn't played in New York. But that song was hot, the flows were crazy. The cycle changed. It really opened up the door for Southern rappers." The album sells 227,000 copies in its first week. It's certified platinum in 2 months. Critics call it a masterpiece, but there's a problem. None of the singles crack the top 10. Rosa Parks, despite being a cultural moment, peaks at number 55. OutKast is critically acclaimed, respected by other artists, commercially successful, but they haven't broken through to the mainstream pop world. And then there's the Rosa Parks lawsuit. The civil rights icon sues them, claiming the song exploits her name. The case drags on, creating controversy and limiting the song's radio play. By 1999, OutKast is at a crossroads. They've proven the South belongs in hip-hop, but to truly change the game, they need to do something no one expects. March 1998. OutKast makes a purchase that will change everything. Bobby Brown, yes, that Bobby Brown, New Edition's bad boy turned solo R&B superstar, had bought a studio in Atlanta back in 1991. He called it Bosstown Recording Studios, envisioning it as a southern answer to Motown. Whitney Houston recorded there. TLC made hits there. It was one of Atlanta's premier facilities. But by the late 90s, Brown had lost the studio to foreclosure. The equipment was mostly gone. The SSLG series console remained, but little else. OutKast bought it. The studio held sentimental value. It was where they first recorded vocals together, on a remix of TLC's What About Your Friends back in 1992. Walking into that building as owners, not clients, felt full circle. They renamed it Stankonia Studios. The name came from André's bedroom. He had a poster of a futuristic city called Plutonia. He combined that with stank, southern slang for funky, and created Stankonia. As he explained, "Stankonia is this place I imagined where you can open yourself up and be free to express anything." They hired engineer John Fry, who had worked with them on early sessions, to refurbish the facility. He gutted and rewired it, installed new recording equipment, brought in Augsburger monitors with Bryston amplification. The studio's massive live room could hold entire bands, and actual stage equipment from previous OutKast tours. Most importantly, owning the studio meant no time constraints, no rental fees, no pressure to finish by a certain hour. As Big Boi put it, "When you own the joint, you can stay here all day, because you never know when the vibe's gonna come. It could be 7 in the morning, it could be 7 at night, it could be midnight, so I was sleeping with the music." In spring 1999, OutKast began work on their 4th album in their own studio, on their own time, with their own vision. They were about to make the most uncompromising, experimental album of their career. For Stankonia, OutKast made a crucial decision. They would produce most of the album themselves. Their previous albums had been primarily produced by Organized Noise, the trio that discovered and nurtured them. But for album 4, André, Big Boi, and their DJ David Mr. DJ Sheets formed a production company called Earthtone III. Mr. DJ, who was related to Organized Noise's Rico Wade, had toured with OutKast and gradually shifted from DJing to production. After proving himself on tracks like Elevators, Me and You, from Atlians, and several songs on Aquamini, he became their go-to collaborator. Organized Noise still contributed. They produced So Fresh, So Clean, Spaghetti Junction, and We Love These Hoes. But roughly 80% of Stankonia was Earthtone III's work. The shift gave OutKast complete creative control. No one could tell them a song was too weird. No one could say a tempo was too fast. No one could question why they were blending gospel with drum and bass. But with freedom came tension. André 3000 was changing. He'd grown tired of traditional rapping. He wanted to sing more, to experiment with melody, to push his voice in new directions. He was listening to Prince, Jimi Hendrix, George Clinton, not hip-hop. In fact, while making Stankonia, OutKast deliberately stopped listening to hip-hop entirely. That music was starting to sound real comfortable, they explained. There wasn't any adventure to it. Big Boi was initially uncomfortable with André's new direction. There's a famous anecdote. The first time André started singing in the studio, Big Boi pulled him aside and said, "I just want to let you know, niggas in the street, they don't be liking when you do your voice like that." But André pushed forward. "In my head, I was like, it sounds cool. Maybe I'm not transmitting it right, but this is cool." So that really kinda gave me a push. They compromised. Big Boi would continue his straightforward, technically proficient rapping style. André would blend rapping with his soul-inspired crooning. The tension between their approaches would become Stankonia's creative engine. The album's working method was unconventional. They'd visit clubs in downtown Atlanta, find performers they liked, and invite them back to the studio. Then, as one participant recalled, they'd sit around, smoke a few, drink a few, and create. While Big Boi worked primarily in the studio, André would often create at home, experimenting with an acoustic guitar. One of those guitar sessions birthed Ms. Jackson. The sessions stretched over a year. No deadlines, no rush, just experimentation. Fall 1999. In Stankonia Studios, OutKast is working on what will become the album's lead single. The beat is insane, 155 beats per minute, way faster than typical hip-hop. It incorporates drum and bass rhythms, the kind you'd hear at a rave, not on a rap album. There are guitar solos, scratching from Mr. DJ, gospel choir vocals from Morris Brown College. André 3000 later explained the inspiration to Rick Rubin. I wouldn't have done Bombs Over Baghdad if it weren't for Rage Against the Machine. Because I felt urgency in their music, so I was like, how can I add urgency to what we're doing? The urgency was deliberate. OutKast looked around at the turn of the millennium. Y2K paranoia, new drugs flooding into the hip-hop scene, ecstasy, cocaine, methamphetamine, life moving at breakneck speed, and decided the music needed to reflect that chaos. Big Boi explained, "Niggas living this life at a fast speed don't know what's going on around them. If you live fast, you're gonna come out of here real fast, so the music need to show that." The title came from a random moment. André was on tour in London, watching the news. A reporter said something about bombs over Baghdad, referring to ongoing tensions with Iraq from the Gulf War. André thought it sounded good, filed it away. The song isn't political. It's about hip-hop artists who go halfway, who don't commit. But the phrase, bombs over Baghdad, gave it an edge, a sense of danger and immediacy. Nobody had heard anything like it. The guitar solo was played by one of their band's guitarists, either David Wild or Donnie Mathis. Leeface Records actually suggested bringing in Kid Rock to play it, hoping for star power. OutKast refused. This was their vision. When they brought B.O.B. to the label as the proposed first single, executives panicked. This wasn't radio-friendly. This was too fast, too experimental, too weird. Radio proved them right, sort of. Many urban top 40 stations banned B.O.B. because of its title. People assumed it was about war, about violence, something controversial. The song peaked at only number 69 on the R&B hip-hop chart. But here's what the label didn't count on. B.O.B. became a cult phenomenon. Alternative rock stations played it because of the guitar work. Electronic music fans loved the drum and bass. It crossed boundaries the industry didn't know existed. Rolling Stone later ranked it 21st on their 100 Best Songs of the 2000s list. Pitchfork named it the #1 song of the entire decade, calling it not just the song of the decade, it is the decade. 3 years after the song came out, the US invaded Iraq. Suddenly, Bombs Over Baghdad became eerily prophetic. American soldiers adopted it as an unofficial anthem. OutKast had accidentally created a war song before the war even started. While B.O.B. grabbed headlines for being revolutionary, it was the album's second single that would make OutKast pop superstars. Ms. Jackson started with an acoustic guitar. André was at home, playing around, and stumbled onto a progression that felt right. He brought it to the studio and Earthtone the 3 built a track around it. Twisted keyboards, slippery drums, a melody that samples Strawberry Letter 23 by the Brothers Johnson. But it was the subject matter that made the song special. Both André and Big Boi were dealing with baby mama drama. André had broken up with singer Erykah Badu the previous year. They had a son together, 7 Sirius Benjamin, born in 1997. The split was messy and André felt like Badu's mother, Ms. Jackson, saw him as a deadbeat, someone who abandoned her daughter. Big Boi was going through his own struggles with the mother of his children. The relationships were strained, complicated by arguments and hurt feelings. The song became a message to all the mothers of their children. An apology, an explanation, a plea for understanding. Yeah, this one right here goes out to all the babies' mamas, baby mamas. André's verse is deeply personal, addressing Badu's mother directly through the song, apologizing a trillion times for making her daughter cry, but also asserting his commitment to being a father to their son. He asks the question that became iconic. Forever, forever, ever, forever, ever? Big Boi's verse is rawer, more frustrated, struggling to even refer to his ex as a lady despite their shared history. When Erykah Badu first heard the song in 2000, she admitted on the Rap Radar podcast, "It hit kind of a sore spot. I didn't want to hear that, especially when I heard Big Boi's verse. But when she heard André's verse, she felt differently. I felt very good because his verse was really inspiring. He just said how he felt, and it was his honest feelings and I always respected that. And the real Miss Jackson, Badu's mother, Colleen Maria Gibson? She loved it. How did my mama feel? Badu laughed. Baby, she bought herself a Miss Jackson license plate. She had the mug, she had the ink pen, she had the headband, everything. That's who loved it. OutKast wanted to release B.O.B first to set the tone, to show they were turning hip-hop up to notch 20, as André put it. The label wanted the more commercial Miss Jackson first. OutKast won that battle. But when Miss Jackson hit radio in October 2000, it vindicated the label's instincts. The song was undeniable, personal, catchy, vulnerable in a way hip-hop rarely allowed. It entered the Billboard Hot 100 and climbed steadily. On February 17, 2001, Miss Jackson hit number 1, OutKast's first chart topper. It stayed there for 1 week, but its impact lasted forever. This was Southern hip-hop conquering pop music on its own terms, with its own sound, telling its own stories. The year-long recording process for Stankonia was unlike anything OutKast had done before. They assembled over 30 musicians and guest performers. Big Boi worked primarily in the studio, crafting verses, perfecting flows. André split his time between the studio and his home, where he'd write stray lyrics on his walls. As he explained, I had planned to paint my house anyway. Writing on the walls was just something I would do. One of those wall lyrics became Gasoline Dreams, the album's dark opening track about the music industry's exploitation. The Vibe sessions produced unexpected collaborations. A then unknown rapper named Killer Mike appeared on Snappin' and Trappin', using the opportunity to try to compete with OutKast and improve his skills. He'd later become a Grammy-winning solo artist and half of Run the Jewels. Gangsta Boo from 3-6 Mafia appeared on the Prince-influenced I'll Call Before I Come. Erykah Badu lent her voice to Humble Mumble. Wu-Tang's Be Real contributed to Explosion. CeeLo Green from Goody Mob sang on Slum Beautiful. The album's musical palette was staggering. Humble Mumble starts as a salsa track and evolves into a club groove. Gasoline Dreams is a gritty rock scorcher featuring Cujo Goody from Goody Mob. Red Velvet is pure psychedelic funk. The title track, Stankonia, Stanklove, featuring Sleepy Brown and Big Rube is a 7-minute P-Funk odyssey. Throughout the album are interludes, I'm Cool, DF, Kim and Cookie, Good Hair, Cruisin' in the ATL, snippets of Atlanta life, phone conversations, random moments that give the album a documentary feel. Some criticize these interludes as filler, but they serve a purpose, grounding the album's experimental flights in the reality of Southern black life, reminding listeners that for all its futuristic sounds, this is still an album from Atlanta, for Atlanta. The technical achievement was remarkable. When engineer John Fry mixed Doo-Wop, That Thing, for Lauryn Hill, he used 128 tracks. Stankonia's tracks were similarly complex, layering live instrumentation with samples, drum machines with live drums, creating walls of sound that felt both organic and electronic. Halloween Night. Stankonia arrives in record stores. The cover is stark, an inverted American flag behind André and Big Boi. Unlike Aquemini's colorful mysticism, this is confrontational, almost militant. André stands shirtless, hands spread like a conductor or puppeteer. Big Boi leans casual in a white t-shirt, diamond-encrusted DF chain for Dungeon Family, revealing nothing. The music inside is 74 minutes of controlled chaos. Critics scramble to describe it. Rolling Stone gives it 4 stars. Stankonia is one of the best albums of the year. NME declares OutKast hit that rare balance of creative eccentricity and mass appeal. The Village Voice praises their feel for sonics and structure. The album debuts at number 2 on the Billboard 200, kept from the top spot by U2's All That You Can't Leave Behind. First week sales, 530,000 copies. Within days, it's certified gold. Within weeks, platinum. It will eventually go quadruple platinum, selling over 4 million copies in the United States alone. B.O.B becomes a cultural phenomenon despite limited radio play. Alternative rock stations, electronic music venues, hip-hop clubs, everyone claims the song. It appears in movies, commercials, sporting events. So Fresh, So Clean becomes the 3rd single in March 2001. Produced by Organized Noise, it's OutKast at their most effortlessly cool, sampling Joe Simon's Before the Night Is Over and creating a smooth, funky celebration of looking good and feeling good. But it's Miss Jackson that changes everything. The number 1 hit proves OutKast isn't just critical darlings or underground heroes. They're pop stars now, mainstream stars, crossover stars, all while staying true to their Southern roots and experimental vision. February 27, 2002, the 44th Annual Grammy Awards at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. OutKast arrives nominated for 3 Grammys: Best Rap Album, Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group for Miss Jackson, and Best Rap Solo Performance for Big Boi on The Whole World from a Greatest Hits compilation. They're up against heavy competition. Jay-Z's The Blueprint, Busta Rhymes' Genesis, Ludacris's Word of Mouth, and Missy Elliott's Miss E. So Addictive are also nominated for Best Rap Album. OutKast wins Best Rap Performance by a duo or group for Ms. Jackson. Then they win Best Rap Album for Stankonia. In his acceptance speech, Big Boi keeps it brief. "I want to thank God first and foremost for giving us this talent." André adds, "This is so overwhelming. We're just blessed, man." They don't win Album of the Year. That goes to the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack. Some in the hip-hop community feel OutKast was snubbed, but the 2 Grammy wins represent something bigger: institutional recognition that Southern hip-hop, Atlanta hip-hop, OutKast's experimental hip-hop belongs at the highest levels of the industry. 5 years after being booed at the Source Awards for being from the South, OutKast stood on the Grammy stage holding 2 trophies. The South had something to say indeed. The immediate impact of Stankonia was obvious: sales, awards, hit singles. But the deeper impact took years to fully appreciate. Producer Pill later said, "The sounds, the instrumentation, the different horns, everything about the tracks were great to me." The album showed producers that hip-hop could incorporate any sound, any genre, any influence. Singer Janelle Monáe cited Stankonia's experimental nature as a major influence on her 2010 album, The Archandroid. The freedom to genre blend, to create sonic worlds beyond traditional category, that came from albums like Stankonia. The album validated Southern hip-hop completely. T.I., Ludacris, Lil Wayne, Rick Ross, 2 Chainz, Megan Thee Stallion, J. Cole, all benefited from doors OutKast kicked open. Atlanta became not just a hip-hop city but the hip-hop city, the genre's creative capital. The experimental approach influenced a generation of artists. Kanye West's willingness to sing, to be vulnerable, to genre blend on albums like 808s and Heartbreak, that has Stankonia DNA. Kid Cudi's melodic rap singing hybrid, that's in conversation with Andre 3000's vocal experiments. Drake's seamless movement between rapping and singing, the blueprint was drawn by OutKast. Even the production aesthetics changed. The idea that hip-hop could be fast, could incorporate electronic music and rock guitars, could feature choir arrangements and psychedelic breakdowns. Stankonia normalized all of it. Stankonia helped hip-hop build its foundation in the mainstream, Mike stated in 2015. The deep cuts are still some of the most rewarding experimental hip-hop around. In 2020, Rolling Stone placed Stankonia at number 64 on its revised 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list, up from 359 in 2003. The album aged like wine, becoming more influential with time. Time magazine named it one of the 100 best albums of all time in 2006. Paste magazine ranked it number 6 on its 2024 list of the greatest albums ever made. Metacritic gave it a 95 out of 100. Pitchfork scored it 9.5. These aren't just good reviews, these are numbers reserved for untouchable classics. But there's a bittersweet reality to Stankonia's success. It was the last time OutKast truly functioned as a unified duo. The creative tension between André and Big Boi, the push and pull between experimental and traditional, between singing and rapping, between cosmic and street, had created magic, but that tension was also pulling them apart. André was increasingly interested in exploring sounds and styles that had nothing to do with traditional hip-hop. Big Boi wanted to stay rooted in the culture, in the streets, in Atlanta. Their next release, 2003's Speakerboxxx The Love Below, was essentially 2 solo albums packaged together. Big Boi's Speakerboxxx was traditional OutKast, Southern funk, hard-hitting rap, guest appearances from the Dungeon family. André's The Love Below was a genre-bending art project featuring Hey Ya, a pop-rock song disguised as hip-hop. The album was massively successful, selling 11 million copies, winning Album of the Year at the Grammys. But it wasn't really an OutKast album, it was 2 solo artists under one brand. Their 2006 album Idlewild, a soundtrack to their film of the same name, was their final collaboration. It sold well but received mixed reviews. More importantly, it felt like an ending, not a continuation. Since then, OutKast has reunited for occasional performances, a 40-show festival run in 2014, sporadic appearances, but no new music, no return to the studio magic of the Stankonia era. In that sense, Stankonia represents the peak of OutKast as a creative unit, the moment when their opposing forces balanced perfectly, the moment when creative tension produced brilliance instead of conflict. Live from the center of the earth, 7 light years below sea level, we go. Welcome to Stankonia, the place from which all funky things come. Would you like to come? That's how the album opens. André's voice inviting us into a mythical place, a state of mind, a musical dimension where anything is possible. 24 years later, we're still visiting Stankonia, still discovering new layers in its production, still quoting its lyrics, still marveling at its ambition. The album's title was perfect. Stankonia, the land of funk, the land of freedom, the place where OutKast could be exactly who they wanted to be without apology or compromise. André explained it simply. Stankonia is this place I imagined where you can open yourself up and be free to express anything. That freedom resulted in one of hip-hop's most daring albums. An album that said yes to every influence, every experiment, every risk. An album that proved Southern hip-hop didn't need to sound like New York or Los Angeles. It could sound like Atlanta, like the future, like nothing anyone had heard before. 5 years after standing on a New York stage and declaring the South got something to say, OutKast said it definitively with Stankonia. Not with boasts or bravado, but with music so innovative, so undeniable, so perfectly executed that even the skeptics had to respect it. In doing so, they didn't just make one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever created. They changed what hip-hop could be, where it could come from, what it could sound like. The South didn't just have something to say. The South was leading the conversation, and 24 years later we're still listening. This has been the Sound Vault. Every album has a story, and some stories, like OutKast's, never stop echoing.